He spent his last $35 on a storage unit. What his dog uncovered inside would put powerful men on edge forever. In a quiet Montana town, a homeless Navy SEAL named Ryan Walker walks into a dusty auction with nothing but a worn jacket and a loyal German Shepherd by his side. When he wins a forgotten storage unit, it feels like a mistake, until his dog locks onto something hidden in the shadows. What they uncover isn't just lost property. It's a secret someone would do anything to keep buried. Comment 1 or 0 and tell me where you're watching from. The wind rolled low across the gravel lot, carrying dust and the faint smell of rusted metal. It was the kind of cold that didn't just touch your skin. It settled into your bones and stayed there. A loose sheet of tin clanged somewhere in the distance, echoing across the row of storage units like a hollow warning. Ryan Walker stood near the back of the crowd, shoulders slightly hunched, hands buried deep in the pockets of a worn-out jacket that had seen better winters. His beard was uneven, his eyes shadowed, not from lack of sleep alone, but from something deeper, something older, the kind of tired that didn't go away. Beside him, Coda stood alert. The German Shepherd's posture was rigid, ears forward, eyes scanning everything, every movement, every voice, every shifting shadow. Unlike Ryan, Coda didn't look worn down. He looked ready. "All right, folks," the auctioneer called out, clapping his hands together. "Unit 47. Been locked up over 10 years. No owner claims. What you see is what you get." A few men chuckled. Someone muttered, "Probably just trash." Ryan didn't respond. He wasn't really listening. His focus drifted in and out, the way it always did when there were too many voices, too many sudden sounds. A slammed truck door made his shoulders tense for just a second too long. A reflex. A memory. Coda nudged his leg gently. Ryan looked down, exhaled slowly, grounding himself. "I'm all right," he murmured under his breath. The crowd shifted forward as the auctioneer yanked up the metal door. It screeched loudly, the sound cutting through the air like a blade. Ryan flinched, just barely, but enough. Coda didn't flinch. He froze. The inside of the unit was dim, filled with old furniture, boxes, and what looked like broken appliances. Dust hung thick in the air, drifting in the pale morning light. To anyone else, it looked exactly like what it was supposed to be. Forgotten, abandoned, worthless. But Coda's low growl said otherwise. Ryan noticed immediately. His eyes narrowed, not at the junk, but at the dog. "What is it?" he whispered. Coda didn't move. His gaze was locked deep inside the unit, unblinking, focused on something Ryan couldn't yet see. "All right, let's start the bidding at 50, the auctioneer shouted. A man in a flannel jacket raised his hand. 50, 60, 70. The numbers climbed fast, voices overlapping, energy rising. Ryan stayed still, watching Coda. The dog took one slow step forward, muscles tight, nose twitching slightly. Something wasn't right. The bid slowed. 80 going once, 80 going twice. The flannel jacket man hesitated. He looked at the unit again, then shrugged. Not worth it. Silence. The auctioneer glanced around. Anyone else? $80? Ryan reached into his pocket. His fingers brushed against a small stack of bills. Crumpled. Thin. Everything he had left. For a moment he didn't move. A flicker of memory hit him. Sand. Heat. The distant sound of gunfire. A voice yelling orders. Then silence. Then loss. Coda let out a low, sharp bark. Ryan blinked, pulled back to the present. The dog wasn't barking at the people. He was staring into that unit like something inside was staring back. Ryan swallowed. 35, he said. The crowd turned, The auctioneer frowned. Minimum's 80. Ryan stepped forward slightly. It's all I got. A few people laughed. Man, you serious? Someone said. That junk ain't worth your last dime. Ryan didn't look at them. His eyes stayed on the unit. On Coda. The auctioneer hesitated, then sighed. No one else is bidding. Fine. 35. Going once? A pause. Going twice? Coda's ears twitched. Sold. The sound of the gavel hitting wood echoed louder than it should have. Ryan exhaled slowly, like he'd just made a decision he didn't fully understand. The crowd dispersed quickly, their interest gone as fast as it came. A few glanced back at Ryan with smirks, shaking their heads. Hope you find gold in there, buddy, one of them joked. Ryan ignored it. He stepped toward the unit, boots crunching softly on gravel. The closer he got, the more he felt it. That subtle shift in the air. Not danger exactly, but something off. Something unfinished. Coda moved ahead of him, slow and deliberate. The dog stopped just at the threshold. Didn't step inside. Just stood there, staring. Ryan reached out and rested a hand on Coda's back. The fur was warm, steady beneath his palm. Real, grounding. All right, Ryan said quietly. Let's see what we bought. He stepped into the unit. Dust stirred under his boots. The smell of old wood and metal filled his lungs. Sunlight cut through the darkness in thin beams, revealing outlines of broken chairs, stacked boxes, and a leaning cabinet that looked ready to collapse. Nothing unusual, nothing valuable. But Coda didn't move. The dog let out another low growl, deeper this time. Ryan turned. Coda's gaze wasn't scanning anymore. It was fixed, locked onto a single point deep inside the shadows. Ryan followed the line of sight. At first, he saw nothing. Then, something shifted. Not movement. Just a shape. Half hidden behind a pile of old furniture. Something that didn't quite match the rest. Too clean. Too deliberate. Ryan's chest tightened slightly. Yeah, he muttered. I see it. Coda finally stepped forward. Slow, careful, like he already knew what was waiting. And for the first time in a long while, Ryan felt something he hadn't felt in months. Not fear, not pain, curiosity. The kind that pulls you forward, even when you know you should walk away. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the loose metal doors along the row. But inside Unit 47, everything felt still. Too still. Like the past hadn't left this place. Like it had just been waiting for someone to open the door. Ryan stood there a moment longer, eyes fixed on the shadowed corner of the unit, but he didn't move any closer. Not yet. The feeling in his chest wasn't fear. It was something heavier, familiar. The same quiet tension that used to sit in the air before everything went wrong. Coda stepped forward first. The dog's nose lowered, drawing in slow, deliberate breaths. His body moved with purpose, not curiosity. This wasn't exploration. It was recognition. Instinct sharpened by years Ryan could never fully explain to anyone who hadn't lived it. Easy, Ryan said softly. Coda paused, just long enough to glance back at him. That look, steady, grounded, had pulled Ryan out of darker places than this. Ryan exhaled, forcing his shoulders to relax. All right, he whispered. We'll take it slow. He turned away from the shadows for now and began pulling smaller boxes toward the entrance, letting daylight spill deeper into the unit. Dust swirled around him, catching the light like drifting ash. Most of it was exactly what it looked like. Old clothes, cracked dishes, forgotten things no one had bothered to claim. Nothing that explained the feeling in the air. Nothing that explained Coda. An hour passed before Ryan finally stepped back outside. The sun had climbed higher, but the cold hadn't let go. It never really did in this part of Montana, especially near the lake. The surface was frozen solid now, a dull sheet of white stretching out toward the distant tree line. Ryan leaned against his truck, rubbing his hands together. The truck itself wasn't much. Faded paint, dented door, engine that coughed before it started. But it was shelter. It was what he had. Coda jumped up into the bed without being told, circling once before settling down. His eyes never left Ryan. "You're not done, are you?" Ryan said quietly. Coda didn't blink. Ryan gave a faint, tired smile. "Yeah, I figured." By the time the sun dipped low, Ryan had cleared just enough space inside the unit to close the door again. He didn't touch the back corner. Not yet. He didn't need to. He could feel it waiting. That night, the cold came harder. Ryan parked near the frozen lakeside, where the land opened wide and quiet. No traffic, no noise. Just wind and the distant creak of trees shifting under frost. He pulled an old blanket tighter around his shoulders in the front seat, breath fogging the glass. Sleep didn't come easy. It never did. Coda climbed halfway into the front, pressing close against him, warm and solid. Ryan rested a hand on the dog's neck, fingers buried in thick fur. "Stay with me," he murmured. Coda didn't move. The silence stretched. Then, a sharp sound. Not real. A memory. Ryan's eyes snapped open, heart pounding. For a second, he wasn't in the truck anymore. He was somewhere else. Heat, dust, shouting, the echo of gunfire cutting through the air. "Walker! Move!" The voice hit him like a strike. Ryan jerked upright, breath coming fast. His hand reached instinctively toward something that wasn't there anymore. Coda shifted immediately, pressing harder into him, grounding him. "It's okay," Ryan whispered, though his voice shook. It's not there." But the images didn't fade right away. They never did. A doorway blown open. Smoke thick enough to choke on. A teammate falling. Ryan squeezed his eyes shut. "Stop," he muttered. "Just stop." Coda nudged his chest firmly. Ryan opened his eyes again. Darkness. Cold. The inside of the truck. He focused on Coda's breathing. Slow, steady, in, out, in, out. Ryan matched it, forcing his own breath to follow. After a while, the tension eased. Not gone, but pushed back enough to think again. "You pulled me out of that," Ryan said quietly, his hand resting on Coda's head. "Same as always." Coda's tail thumped once against the seat. Ryan leaned his head back, staring through the fogged windshield at the frozen lake beyond. "Funny," he murmured. "Out of everything, we end up here." He let out a slow breath. "Still alive." The words didn't carry much comfort, just truth. The wind picked up again, rattling softly against the truck. Ryan shifted slightly, pulling the blanket tighter. "Tomorrow," he said, "we'll go back, finish what we started." Coda lifted his head. Ryan glanced at him. "Yeah," he added, "I know. You're already there." A faint, tired smile crossed his face. For the first time in days, Ryan closed his eyes without fighting it. Sleep came slowly, but it came. And this time, no gunfire, no shouting, just the quiet sound of wind over frozen water, and the steady presence of something that had never left his side. Morning came pale and cold. Ryan stepped out of the truck, boots crunching against frost. The air bit at his lungs, sharp and clean, Coda jumped down beside him, already alert. Ryan stretched slightly, rolling tension out of his shoulders. "You ready?" he asked. Coda was already moving toward the road. Ryan glanced back once at the lake, then followed. Because whatever was waiting inside that storage unit, it hadn't been left behind by accident. And Coda knew it, which meant one thing. Ryan didn't really have a choice anymore. Not if he wanted answers. Not if he wanted the past to stop feeling like it was still breathing down his neck. The sun rose slowly behind them as they drove back toward town. Toward Unit 47. Toward something that had already started to change everything. Even if Ryan didn't understand how. Yet. The storage yard looked different in the morning. The same chain-link fence leaned slightly toward the road. The same row of metal doors sat beneath a pale Montana sky. The same gravel lot stretched empty and cold beneath tires and boot prints. But now that Ryan had slept, if a few restless hours with one eye open could be called sleep, the place felt less like a bargain and more like a question, and questions had a way of finding him. He parked his truck near Unit 47 and cut the engine. Silence folded over the yard almost immediately, broken only by the ticking of hot metal cooling under the hood. Coda was out before Ryan had the key fully in his pocket. The German Shepherd landed on the gravel, ears high, posture tight, and turned toward the unit as if he had never really left it. Ryan stepped out more slowly. His body still carried the stiff ache of cold, of cramped sleep, of years that had piled up harder than they should have. He slammed the truck door, then winced at the sharp sound bouncing across the lot. Old reflex. He scanned the open spaces, the far corners, the office building with its dusty front window. Nobody. Still, he kept his gaze moving. Coda let out a quiet sound in his throat and headed straight for the unit. "Yeah," Ryan said under his breath. "I know." The lock was gone now. The door felt heavier than it had the day before. Ryan gripped the handle and pulled. The metal rolled upward with a long, scraping protest, and the smell met him at once. Dust, old wood, stale fabric, and something faintly metallic underneath it all. Coda slipped inside before the light had fully settled. Ryan followed. The back corner waited in shadow, just as it had the day before. The leaning cabinet, the broken dining chairs, a tower of damp boxes half collapsed on themselves. And behind all of it, that shape Ryan had noticed only at the edge of his vision. Too deliberate. Too clean. He set his jaw and moved closer. "You stay on me," he said softly. Coda stayed slightly ahead anyway. Ryan didn't mind. He never really had. They worked in silence for the first few minutes. Ryan lifted a cracked tabletop and leaned it against the wall. He shoved aside a mattress stained by time and damp. He pulled down 2 boxes that fell apart in his hands, spilling old magazines, yellowed receipts, and a child's winter mitten with one thumb worn nearly through. That stopped him for a moment. He picked it up. Pink, small, soft once, maybe. Now it was cold and faded and out of place in his rough hand. Ryan stared at it longer than he meant to. A memory flickered. His sister hanging tiny mittens by a door years ago, laughing about snow coming early that winter. He had missed that winter. Missed a lot of things. Birthdays, funerals, quiet dinners where nothing important happened, which later turned out to be the things that mattered most. Coda barked once. Ryan looked up sharply. The dog stood rigid beside the back wall, one paw braced against a pile of splintered wood and broken lamp pieces. His nose was buried low, inhaling hard. Then he started digging, not wildly, precisely. Boards scraped against concrete. Dust burst into the air. Ryan dropped the mitten and moved fast, crouching beside him. "What is it?" Coda dug deeper, pushing aside scraps Ryan might have ignored. A warped shelf, a torn blanket, the frame of an old rocking chair. Beneath it all, something flat and dark caught the light. Metal. Ryan's pulse shifted. He cleared more debris with both hands now, pushing through dust and cobwebs until the thing beneath emerged fully. A rectangular case, military green once but dulled by years of grime. Not large, maybe 2 feet wide. Reinforced corners, heavy hinges. No markings on top except the faint ghost of something that had been scratched off. Coda stepped back just enough to let Ryan take it. The case was colder than the air around it. And heavier. Ryan set it on the concrete floor, in a strip of thin sunlight. Dust clung to his hands. His breathing slowed, almost against his will. The old part of his mind, the part trained to read objects before touching them, had already taken over. Shape, weight, build, age, purpose. "This isn't junk," he said quietly. Coda's ears twitched. The latches were stiff but intact. Ryan brushed away dirt with the edge of his sleeve. His fingers paused over the first clasp. A sudden image flashed in his mind. A crate in another country. Heat. Sweat in his eyes. A teammate whispering, "Wait. Something's wrong." Ryan pulled his hand back. For 1 second, the room narrowed around him. The air felt too thin. Coda nudged his arm hard. Ryan blinked, looked at the dog, forced his gaze down to the case. "It's not then," he said under his breath. "It's now." He opened the first latch, then the second. The hinges creaked as he lifted the lid. Inside, everything was packed with unsettling care. Not treasure, not valuables laid out for display. Just things chosen to be kept. Wrapped bundles of cash, old and tightly banded. A flip phone with its battery removed. A photograph, face down. And beneath them, tucked into the bottom as if meant never to be found, a narrow envelope sealed with yellowed tape. Ryan stared for a long moment without touching anything. Coda lowered his head beside the case and sniffed once, then twice, then huffed sharply, as if confirming what he had suspected all along. Ryan picked up the phone first. Cheap. Older model. Scratched casing. No charger. No battery inside. Then the cash. More than he had held in years. Maybe more than he had seen at one time since leaving the service. Enough to buy weeks, maybe months of food and gas. Enough to disappear for a while if disappearing was what a man wanted. But Ryan set it back down. Because money wasn't what made his chest tighten. It was the photograph. He turned it over slowly. A young girl stood in front of a cabin buried in snow, maybe 10 years old, maybe younger. Dark coat, knit hat, one mitten missing. Behind her, pine trees crowded close around a wooden structure half hidden by the white landscape. A broken rail fence leaned off to one side. In the far corner of the photo, just barely visible, sat part of a truck bumper. The girl wasn't smiling. She was looking at the camera with an expression children weren't supposed to wear. Too careful, too alert, as if someone had told her not to move and she had obeyed. Ryan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Coda gave a low growl. "You see it too," Ryan murmured. He flipped the photo over. Nothing written on the back. Just age. Just silence. Ryan reached for the envelope, but before he could touch it, a sound outside stopped him cold. Gravel. Not loud. Just a faint crunch. He froze. Coda's head came up instantly, body going rigid. Another sound. A footstep? A shifting weight? Ryan closed the case halfway and rose without thinking. Every muscle in him sharpened. His eyes scanned the strip of daylight near the entrance. Nothing moved. Then a shadow slid across the ground just beyond the open door. Human. Gone before he reached the threshold. Ryan stepped outside fast. The lot looked empty. Rows of units, wind pushing grit along the ground, a pickup half a row over that might have been there before, or might not. Hard to tell. No voices. No office clerk outside smoking. No one walking away. But somebody had been there. He knew the difference between imagination and instinct. One had haunted him. The other had kept him alive. Coda came out beside him, hackles raised. Ryan studied the road beyond the fence. Empty. Still, the back of his neck stayed tight. He looked down at the dog. We're not alone anymore. Coda's gaze remained fixed on the far end of the property. Ryan went back inside and shut the storage door halfway, leaving just enough light to work. The open feeling was gone now. The unit felt smaller, closer. He crouched beside the case again. The envelope was the last thing left untouched. He peeled the old tape slowly, careful not to tear what was inside. A single folded piece of paper slid into his hand. He opened it. Inside, in small block letters, were only 6 numbers and 1 line beneath them. 46.7719 minus 113.9480. If you found this, don't trust the police. Ryan read it twice, then a third time, coordinates, and a warning. He felt the room go quiet in a new way, not empty, focused. He looked at the photograph again. The girl, the snow-covered cabin, the missing mitten, a place in the mountains, a hidden case cache, a dead phone, a warning. And now someone watching from outside. Coda pressed close to his shoulder and let out a low, uneasy breath. Ryan folded the note carefully and slipped it into his jacket pocket. Whatever this was, it was no longer some abandoned mystery sealed up in dust and old furniture. It had edges now. It had weight. And somewhere between the girl in that photograph and the message in his pocket, Ryan felt something old waking up inside him. Not the fear, not the panic, not the guilt. Something steadier. Training. Instinct. Purpose. He didn't welcome it. But he didn't push it away either. Because outside, somewhere beyond the rows of storage units and the pale Montana sky, someone already knew this case had been found. And that meant one thing. The moment the metal door had opened yesterday, this had stopped being about luck. Ryan didn't linger. He closed the case, latched it tight, and wrapped it in an old blanket from the unit. The less it looked like something worth taking, the better. The photograph and the folded note stayed in his jacket pocket, pressed close against his chest like something fragile and dangerous. Coda didn't relax as they stepped back out into the cold. The dog's head moved constantly now, tracking invisible lines across the empty yard, ears pivoting at the smallest shift in sound. The wind picked up, rattling loose metal again, but beneath it there was something else. Something human. Something watching. Ryan locked the unit and turned once more toward the road beyond the fence. Still nothing. But the feeling didn't leave. "Let's move," he said quietly. They loaded the wrapped case into the back of the truck. Ryan covered it with a tarp and secured it down, his movements quick but controlled. He didn't rush. Rushing made mistakes. But he didn't waste time either. When he climbed into the driver's seat, his eyes swept the mirrors before he turned the key. Empty lot. Empty road. He pulled out anyway. The town sat low and quiet between stretches of open land and pine-covered hills, a place where everyone noticed everything, but pretended not to. Ryan kept his speed steady, not too fast, not too slow. His eyes moved constantly, rear view, side mirror, road ahead. At first, nothing followed. Then, halfway down a long stretch of highway, he saw it. A black pickup. Far back. too far to be sure. He drove another mile. The truck stayed, not gaining, not falling behind. Just there. Ryan's grip tightened slightly on the wheel. "Coda," he said. The dog shifted in the passenger seat, head lifting, eyes cutting toward the side mirror. A low sound built in his chest. Not loud, but enough. "Yeah," Ryan murmured. "I see it." He didn't speed up. Instead, he turned off onto a side road without signaling. Gravel crunched under the tires. Dust kicked up behind him. In the mirror, the black pickup continued straight. Ryan watched it disappear down the highway. For a moment, silence returned. Then Coda's ears stayed up. Ryan didn't relax. "Could be nothing," he said. But he didn't believe it. The roadside diner sat just outside town, a narrow building with faded red paint and a flickering sign that buzzed quietly in the cold air. A few pickup trucks were parked outside. The smell of coffee and fried food drifted faintly through the door as Ryan stepped in. Warmth hit him first, then sound, low conversations, clinking dishes, a radio murmuring in the background. Coda stayed close at his side, drawing a few glances, but no objections. People in this part of the country didn't ask too many questions, as long as a dog was well behaved. Ryan slid into a booth near the window, where he could see the road. Coda lay beneath the table, but his head remained up. A waitress approached, notepad in hand. She looked to be in her early 30s, hair tied back, eyes sharp in a way that suggested she noticed more than most. "What can I get you?" she asked. "Coffee," Ryan said. "Black." She nodded, then glanced down at Coda. "He always this serious?" Ryan followed her gaze. "Only when he has a reason." That earned a faint smile. She poured the coffee a moment later, setting the mug down in front of him. "You're not from around here," she said casually. Ryan wrapped his hands around the mug, letting the heat sink into his skin. "No." She studied him for a second longer than necessary. Then her tone shifted, just slightly. "You bought that unit yesterday," she said. It wasn't a question. Ryan's eyes lifted slowly. "Word travels fast," he said. She leaned one hand on the edge of the table, lowering her voice just enough. "Faster than it should." Coda shifted under the table. Ryan noticed. "So what's the story?" he asked. She hesitated, then glanced toward the front windows. "Name's Lily," she said. "Lily Carter." Ryan gave a small nod. "Ryan." Lily looked back at him, her expression more serious now. "That unit," she said quietly. "It didn't just get forgotten." Ryan didn't respond. He let the silence sit. She continued anyway. "The guy who rented it, no one's seen him in years. Just gone. No family came looking. No friends asking questions, like he just stopped existing." Ryan took a slow sip of coffee. "And no one thought that was strange?" Lily gave a small, humorless laugh. "In a place like this, people think a lot of things are strange. They just don't say them out loud." Coda let out a low growl. Ryan's head turned slightly. A man had entered the diner, mid-40s, heavy coat, hands in his pockets. Nothing unusual except the way his eyes scanned the room just a little too carefully before settling on the counter. Ryan watched him in the reflection of the window. Coda didn't take his eyes off him. Lily noticed the shift. "You see him?" she murmured. Ryan didn't answer. The man ordered something at the counter, but his gaze flicked once, quick, toward Ryan's booth, then away, too quick. Ryan set his mug down. "What else?" he asked Lily quietly. She leaned closer. "People who go looking into things around here," she said, "they tend to stop asking questions real fast." Ryan's jaw tightened slightly. Or, she met his eyes. Or they disappear. Silence stretched between them. Coda's growl deepened just a fraction. Ryan didn't look at the man again. He didn't need to. "Thanks for the warning," he said. Lily straightened, her voice returning to normal volume. "Careful out there, Ryan." She walked away, but her eyes lingered on him once more before she turned. Ryan finished his coffee in silence. The man at the counter stayed just long enough to be noticed. Then he left. Ryan waited another full minute before standing. Coda was already on his feet. They stepped outside into the cold again. The wind had picked up. Ryan scanned the parking lot. The black pickup sat across the road now, engine running. No driver visible. Coda's posture went rigid. Ryan's breath slowed. Everything inside him sharpened again. Not panic, not fear. Awareness. "They found us," he said quietly. Coda's eyes locked on the truck. Ryan didn't move toward it. He moved toward his own. Every step measured, every glance controlled. He opened the door, slid inside, and started the engine without hesitation. The black pickup didn't move, but as Ryan pulled out onto the road, it did. Slow, deliberate, keeping distance, following. Ryan's eyes flicked to the mirror, then forward again. The open road stretched ahead, empty and cold. Behind him, the truck stayed steady, unhurried, patient, like it didn't need to catch him, like it already knew where he was going. Ryan tightened his grip on the wheel. "All right," he murmured. Coda sat tall beside him, unblinking. "Now we know." Because whatever had been buried in that storage unit was never meant to stay buried. And now, someone else wanted it back. Ryan kept his eyes on the road. The black pickup followed at a distance, never too close, never too far, just enough to remind him it was there. The kind of pressure that didn't need to act to be effective. Coda sat upright in the passenger seat, gaze locked on the side mirror, tracking every movement behind them. His ears never stopped moving. "They're patient," Ryan said quietly. "That's not good." The road curved along the frozen lake, the same stretch Ryan had parked near the night before. Open land. No cover. No place to disappear. He didn't slow down. Instead, he drove straight past it. The farther he went, the more the town faded behind him, replaced by long, empty miles and patches of pine forest creeping closer to the road. The sky stayed pale, the sun barely cutting through the cold. Ryan's mind worked through it piece by piece. The case, the money, the phone, the photo, the coordinates, and the warning. "If you found this, don't trust the police." He didn't like that part. Didn't trust it either. But something about it felt earned. The black pickup stayed behind him for another 10 minutes. Then, just as quietly as it had appeared, it turned off. Gone. Ryan didn't slow, didn't relax. He drove another 5 miles before pulling off onto a narrow dirt road that cut into a stretch of trees. The truck bumped over uneven ground before coming to a stop in a small clearing, hidden from the main road. Silence settled in again. Coda turned his head slowly, scanning. No movement, no engine, no footsteps. Ryan shut off the truck and sat there for a long moment, hands still on the wheel. "They could have taken it already," he said, "if that's all they wanted." Coda didn't respond. Ryan exhaled slowly, "Which means they're waiting." He stepped out of the truck and moved around to the back. The tarp shifted as he pulled it back, revealing the wrapped case beneath. The cold air hit his face harder out here, sharper, cleaner. He unwrapped the case and opened it again. The contents hadn't changed. Still the same. Still heavy. Ryan picked up the photograph once more. The girl stared back at him with that same guarded expression. He studied the background more carefully this time. The cabin, the trees, the angle of the light. Snow piled along the roofline. Not just any cabin. Remote. Hard to reach. Easy to hide. Ryan turned the photo slightly, then looked back at the note in his pocket. He pulled it out and unfolded it again. The coordinates. Numbers that pointed somewhere very specific, somewhere intentional. Coda moved closer, nose brushing the edge of the case. "You want to go?" Ryan said. Coda's tail moved once. Ryan let out a quiet breath. "I could walk away," he said. He looked out at the trees surrounding them. Empty. Still. "No one would know," he continued. "Take the cash, get gas, head south, find a place where no one's looking." He paused. His fingers tightened slightly around the photograph. "Start over." The words hung there. For a moment, they almost felt real. A life without this weight. Without the memories pressing in at the edges. Without the constant feeling that something unfinished was still following him. Coda let out a soft sound. Ryan looked down. The dog wasn't looking at the road. He wasn't looking at the trees. He was looking at the photograph. Ryan followed his gaze. The girl. Still staring. Still waiting. Something in Ryan's chest shifted. Not sudden. Not dramatic, just steady. "You saw her before I did," Ryan said quietly. Coda's ears flicked. Ryan crouched down beside him. "You always do." He reached out, resting his hand on the side of Coda's neck. The warmth grounded him, same as the night before, same as every time before that. "You pulled me out of worse than this," Ryan murmured. "So I'm guessing you're not telling me to run." Coda didn't move away. Ryan let out a long breath. "Yeah," he said. "Didn't think so." He stood up slowly, looked back at the open road beyond the trees, then back at the case, the money, the phone, the note, the photograph, all of it tied together by something he didn't fully understand yet. But one thing was clear. This wasn't random, and it wasn't over. Ryan closed the case firmly and locked the latches. "We don't sell it," he said. "We don't hide it." He looked down at Coda. "We find out what it is." Coda stepped closer, standing at his side. Ryan gave a small nod. "All right." He wrapped the case again and secured it back under the tarp. Then he climbed into the truck, started the engine, and pulled back onto the dirt road. As the tires hit pavement again, Ryan adjusted his grip on the wheel. "Rocky Mountains aren't far, se. Coordinates point north." Coda sat steady beside him. Ryan glanced once at the mirror. Nothing followed. Not yet. But that didn't mean anything. "They'll come back," he said. Coda didn't react. Ryan's eyes returned to the road ahead. For the first time in a long while, the direction he was heading didn't feel like escape. It felt like a decision. Not to run, not to hide, but to face something head-on. Even if he didn't know what it was yet. Even if it led somewhere he couldn't come back from. The truck moved steadily north, the land slowly rising into hills and then into distant mountains that cut into the sky. Cold. Silent. Unforgiving. Ryan kept driving, because somewhere out there was a cabin, a girl, and a truth someone had tried very hard to bury, and for reasons he couldn't explain. He was no longer willing to leave it buried. The mountains rose slowly at first. Low hills stretched into darker lines of pine, then climbed higher into jagged ridges that cut through the sky. Snow gathered thicker with every mile, covering the ground in a quiet white that softened everything, except the cold. Ryan drove with both hands steady on the wheel, eyes moving between the road and the distant slopes ahead. The truck's engine hummed low, struggling just enough to remind him it wasn't built for this kind of climb. Coda sat upright beside him, silent. No growl now, no bark, just focus, the kind that came before something changed. Ryan glanced at the coordinates again, written in small block numbers on the folded paper resting in the cup holder. 46.7719 minus 113.9480. He didn't need a map to know where it pointed. Deep. Far from town. Far from help. Whoever left that case didn't want this found easy, Ryan muttered. Coda's ears flicked once. The road narrowed as it climbed, asphalt giving way to packed dirt, and then to uneven tracks carved through snow and rock. Tire marks faded the farther they went, until the path ahead looked untouched. Ryan slowed. The truck slid slightly before catching again. "All right," he said under his breath. "Easy." He adjusted, letting the vehicle move with the terrain instead of fighting it. The silence out here was different. Not empty. Heavy. Like the world itself was holding its breath. Ryan felt it settle in his chest, pressing against something old, something familiar. The kind of silence that came before contact. He pushed that thought away. Not now, not here. Coda suddenly leaned forward, nose lifting, drawing in the air. Ryan noticed. "What is it?" Coda didn't respond. His posture shifted, tense, alert, tracking something beyond the road. Ryan's eyes moved to the tree line. Nothing, just snow-laden branches and shadows stretching between them. But the feeling came back. That same awareness from before. They weren't alone. Ryan didn't stop driving. He kept moving. Slow. Controlled. The path curved sharply around a ridge, revealing a narrow wooden bridge ahead. It stretched across a frozen creek, the boards worn and slightly warped, snow gathering in uneven patches across its surface. Ryan eased off the gas. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's see if this holds." Coda remained still. Ryan lined the truck up carefully and rolled forward. The wood creaked under the weight. Not loud, but enough. Each plank groaned as the tires moved across, the sound echoing faintly through the trees. Ryan kept his speed steady, resisting the urge to rush. Halfway across, a crack, not breaking, just shifting. Ryan's grip tightened. "Come on," he whispered. The truck continued forward. One tire slipped slightly, then caught again. Coda didn't move, didn't even blink. Then, solid ground. Ryan exhaled slowly as the truck cleared the bridge. "Still standing," he said. But he didn't look back. The path beyond the bridge narrowed even more, winding deeper into the forest. The trees grew closer together here, their branches forming a loose canopy that dimmed the light. Snow fell lightly now. Not a storm. Just enough to soften sound, to hide movement. Ryan felt it again, that pressure, that sense of being watched. He checked the mirrors. Nothing. But mirrors didn't matter out here. "You picking something up?" he asked. Coda's ears remained forward. Ryan nodded once. "Yeah." Me too. They drove another mile before the path ended. No clearing, no road beyond, just trees and silence. Ryan shut off the engine. The sudden quiet pressed in from all sides. Coda was out of the truck before Ryan opened his door. The dog moved ahead slowly, nose low, tracking. Ryan grabbed the case from the back, slinging it over his shoulder. The cold bit harder now without the truck's engine heat. "Stay close," he said. Coda didn't look back. Ryan followed. Each step crunched softly in the snow. The sound carried just far enough to remind him how exposed they were. The trees stood tall and unmoving, their shadows stretching long across the ground. Then, Coda stopped, dead still. Ryan froze behind him. "What is it?" Coda's head turned slightly to the left. Ryan followed his gaze. At first, he saw nothing. Then, tracks. Faint. Partially covered by fresh snow. Boot prints. Not old. Not completely fresh either, but recent enough. Ryan crouched down, brushing snow aside carefully. The edges were still defined. A few hours, maybe less. His chest tightened. "They're ahead of us," he said quietly. Coda let out a low growl. Ryan stood slowly. "Or waiting." The wind shifted slightly, carrying a faint sound through the trees. Not natural, not wind. A distant metallic creak. Ryan's eyes narrowed. "That's not the forest." Coda moved again, this time faster, following the direction of the sound. Ryan followed, every sense sharpening. The trees thinned just slightly ahead, opening into a narrow clearing. And then, he saw it. The cabin, half buried in snow, just like in the photograph. Weathered wood, roof sagging slightly under the weight of winter. A broken rail fence leaning off to one side. Exactly the same. Ryan stopped at the edge of the clearing. Coda stood beside him, body tense. For a moment, neither of them moved. The cabin sat silent. No smoke, no movement. But something about it felt wrong. Not abandoned, not empty, just waiting. Ryan's breath slowed, his heart steady. The world narrowed to that single point ahead. "This is it," he said quietly. Coda didn't look away. Ryan adjusted the strap of the case on his shoulder. "Stay sharp." They stepped forward together, into the clearing, into the silence, toward the place where everything led. And somewhere deep inside, Ryan felt it again. Not fear, not hesitation. Something colder, something clearer. The same feeling he used to get before stepping into the unknown. The difference now. He wasn't following orders. He was choosing this. And whatever waited inside that cabin was about to be uncovered. The clearing held its breath. Snow fell in thin, drifting lines, soft enough to quiet the world, heavy enough to erase tracks if you stood still long enough. The cabin sat in the center like a memory that refused to fade. Aged wood darkened by time, windows clouded from within. The roof bowed just enough to suggest years of weight pressing down. Ryan didn't move at first. He stood at the edge of the trees, letting his eyes take it in. "Same as the photo," he said under his breath. Coda remained still beside him, every muscle coiled, ears forward, gaze locked on the structure. Ryan scanned the ground. The tracks they'd found in the forest continued here, but thinner, less defined. Whoever had come through had been careful, not rushed, not careless. That told him everything. They knew where they were going, Ryan murmured. Coda took a step forward. Ryan followed. Each footfall sank slightly into the snow, the sound muted, almost swallowed by the cold air. The closer they got, the more the cabin felt wrong. Not just abandoned, interrupted. The front door hung slightly open, just enough to reveal darkness inside. The wind nudged it occasionally, making it creak softly against the frame. Ryan stopped 3 steps from the porch. His eyes moved across the windows. No movement, no shadows. But the silence inside didn't feel empty. He set the case down carefully at the base of the steps. "Stay with me," he said. Coda moved ahead anyway, stepping onto the wooden porch without hesitation. The boards creaked under his weight, the sound echoing just enough to remind Ryan how quiet everything else was. Ryan followed. The door shifted slightly as he pushed it open. A low groan filled the air. The smell hit him first. Cold wood. Old dust. Something faintly metallic beneath it. Ryan stepped inside. The light dimmed instantly, filtered through the clouded windows and drifting snow outside. The room was small, just one main space with a table overturned near the center, a chair lying on its side, and a stove in the corner that hadn't been used in a long time. But it wasn't untouched. Drawers hung open, cabinets half emptied. A blanket lay crumpled on the floor, as if someone had dropped it mid-step. Ryan's jaw tightened. "Not abandoned," he said quietly. Coda moved slowly through the room, nose low, tracking. Ryan followed his movement, scanning everything. No footprints inside. Or if there had been, they'd been disturbed. Too clean. Too deliberate. He crouched near the table, brushing his fingers along the surface. Dust. But disturbed dust. Recently. Coda let out a low sound. Ryan turned. The dog stood near the back wall, staring at something just beyond the edge of the room. Ryan moved closer. A narrow hallway led deeper into the cabin, barely visible in the dim light. The walls felt tighter there, the air colder. Coda didn't wait. He moved down the hallway, step by step. Ryan followed, every sense sharpened. The hallway opened into a smaller room, a bed frame, a torn mattress, and on the floor, a child's blanket. Ryan froze. The same kind of soft fabric as the mitten he'd found in the storage unit. Worn, faded, small. He bent down slowly, picking it up. Still cold. Still here. "This is where she was," he said quietly. Coda circled once, then stopped near the center of the room. His head lowered, then lifted again. Then, he pawed at the floor. Not scratching wildly. Testing. Ryan's eyes narrowed. "What is it?" Coda pressed harder, shifting a loose board slightly out of place. The sound was subtle, but unmistakable. Ryan moved quickly, dropping to his knees. He brushed aside snow that had drifted through cracks in the walls, revealing the edge of a wooden panel that didn't quite match the rest of the floor. Different grain. Different wear. Hidden. Ryan ran his fingers along the seam. "There," he murmured. Coda stepped back just enough to give him space. Ryan gripped the edge of the board and pulled. It resisted at first, then lifted. A dark opening revealed itself beneath. Cold air rushed up from below, sharper than the air in the cabin. Ryan leaned closer. No light. Just blackness. Coda let out a low growl. Ryan's chest tightened slightly. "This wasn't in the photo," he said. He reached into his jacket, pulling out the small flashlight he kept tucked away. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a narrow set of wooden steps leading down. Not natural. Built. Intentional. Ryan's mind worked through it instantly. Hidden space. Concealed access. No visible entry from above. "This wasn't for storage," he said. Coda's growl deepened. Ryan shifted his weight, sitting back on his heels. He looked around the room again. The blanket, the broken furniture, the signs of struggle. And now, this. Whatever had happened here, it hadn't ended upstairs. Ryan swallowed once, steadying himself. His heartbeat slowed, not from calm, but from focus. The same focus that had carried him through places like this before. But this wasn't war. It wasn't orders. It wasn't a mission handed down by someone else. This was his choice. And whatever waited below, he had to face it. Ryan looked at Coda. "You ready?" Coda didn't hesitate. Ryan nodded once. "Stay close." He adjusted his grip on the flashlight and stepped toward the opening. The beam of light cut down the narrow staircase, illuminating just enough to show the path, but not what waited at the bottom. Ryan placed one foot on the first step. The wood creaked softly. Coda followed immediately behind him. Together, they began to descend, into the dark, into whatever truth had been buried beneath this cabin. And with every step downward, the silence above felt farther away, heavier, like it was sealing them in, like once they reached the bottom, there would be no pretending this was just a mystery anymore. Only answers, and whatever came with them. The air grew colder with every step down. Ryan kept one hand against the rough wall, the other holding the flashlight steady. The beam cut through the darkness in a narrow line, revealing worn wooden steps that dipped deeper than the cabin above should have allowed. Coda stayed close behind him, not rushing, not hesitating, just present, every muscle ready. The smell changed as they descended. Less dust, more metal, and something else Ryan recognized immediately. Not fresh, but not forgotten either. The stairs ended sooner than expected. Ryan stepped off onto packed dirt. The beam of his flashlight moved slowly across the space. And then, he stopped. The room below was larger than the cabin itself. Reinforced walls. Rough but deliberate construction. Not a basement, a hidden room. Ryan's breath slowed. "This wasn't random," he said quietly. Coda stepped forward. The light revealed more. Metal shelves lined one wall, holding stacks of documents, boxes, and sealed containers. On the opposite side, a series of hooks hung from a beam, some empty, some holding old coats and bags. At the far end of the room, a table, and on it, items laid out in a way that made Ryan's chest tighten. Personal things. A child's shoe. A small backpack. A notebook with bent corners. Ryan moved closer, each step measured. Coda's nose moved quickly now, tracking every scent layered into the space. Ryan reached the table and stopped. The notebook lay open. Pages filled with names, dates, short notes, some crossed out, some circled. Ryan's jaw clenched. "This is a record," he said. Coda let out a low, uneasy sound. Ryan turned the page slowly. More names, more dates, some with a single word written beside them. Moved, transferred, gone. Ryan exhaled sharply through his nose. Not confusion, recognition. This wasn't just hidden. It was organized, systematic, the kind of operation that didn't happen by accident. His grip tightened on the edge of the table. "Coda," he said quietly. The dog was already moving toward the far corner of the room. Ryan followed. A metal door stood partially open there, leading into a smaller section. Ryan pushed it wider. The hinges creaked softly. Inside, more items. Boxes stacked neatly. Plastic bins, and along one wall, a series of thin mattresses laid side by side. Ryan stopped. The air felt heavier here. Still. Too still. Coda stepped into the room and froze. Then, a low growl. Not loud, but deep. Ryan turned. What is it? Coda's gaze snapped toward the stairs. Ryan's body reacted before his mind caught up. He killed the flashlight. Darkness swallowed the room instantly. Both of them went still, listening. At first, nothing. Then, a sound above. Footsteps. Soft. Careful. Not the wind. Not the cabin settling. Someone moving. Ryan's pulse steadied. Not faster. Clearer. His breathing slowed. The old training slipped into place without effort. He leaned closer to Coda, whispering barely above breath. Stay. Coda didn't move. The footsteps paused above them, then shifted, closer to the opening. Ryan's eyes adjusted slightly to the darkness, catching faint shapes in the room. The stairs, the outline of the doorway. A shadow moved across the top. Ryan's hand tightened into a fist. Unarmed. No advantage, but not unprepared. The shadow lingered. Then, a voice. Low, controlled. Someone's been here. Not loud, but enough. Another voice answered, quieter. Search it. Ryan's jaw tightened. Coda's body tensed beside him. Ryan reached down, resting a hand lightly on the dog's back. Steady. Wait. The footsteps moved again. Closer. The top step creaked. Ryan's mind moved fast. No way out. No cover that would hold. No time. The moment stretched thin, then snapped. Ryan moved. He lunged toward the doorway just as the first figure descended. The collision was fast and controlled, knocking the man off balance before he could react. The second figure hesitated at the top, caught off guard by the sudden movement. Coda didn't hesitate. He surged forward, intercepting the second man's advance, forcing him back up the steps. The confined space turned everything tight. Close. Every movement mattered. Ryan pushed through, creating just enough space to break past the doorway. Move, he called. Coda disengaged instantly, falling back to Ryan's side. They took the stairs fast. 2 steps at a time. The cold air of the cabin above hit them as they broke through the opening. Ryan didn't stop. He grabbed the edge of the floor panel and slammed it back into place, then kicked debris over it in one swift motion. Go! They moved through the cabin, past the overturned table, through the front door. The snow outside felt blinding after the darkness. Ryan ran, Coda beside him. The clearing stretched open, exposed. No cover, no time. They reached the trees just as a shout echoed behind them. Ryan didn't look back, didn't slow. Branches snapped underfoot as they pushed into the forest, weaving between trunks, using the terrain without thinking. Coda stayed tight at his side, matching every turn. The sounds behind them grew faint. Then, gone. Ryan didn't stop until the cabin was no longer visible, until the forest swallowed everything. He slowed finally, breath steady, not panicked. Controlled. Coda stood beside him, chest rising and falling, eyes still alert. Ryan rested his hands on his knees for a moment, then straightened. They were waiting, he said. Coda's ears remained forward. Ryan looked back in the direction of the cabin. They knew we'd come. The weight of it settled in. Not chance, not coincidence. This had been expected. Ryan's eyes hardened slightly, and for the first time since opening that storage unit, He understood something clearly. This wasn't just about what they found. It was about who didn't want it found. And now, they were part of it, whether they wanted to be or not. The forest swallowed sound the deeper they went. Ryan didn't stop running until his legs forced him to. The cold air burned in his lungs, each breath sharp, controlled, but heavier now. Snow cracked beneath his boots, branches brushed against his shoulders, and still, he didn't slow until instinct told him they had put enough distance between themselves and the cabin. Then, he stopped. Coda stopped with him. Silence rushed back in. Not the tense silence from before, not the kind filled with expectation. This was different, empty, heavy. Ryan bent forward slightly, hands on his thighs, catching his breath. His heart pounded, but not from fear, from movement, from action, from the sudden shift from stillness to survival. Coda stayed upright beside him, still alert, still watching. Ryan straightened slowly and turned, scanning the trees behind them. Nothing followed, no voices, no movement, just snow falling through the branches. They didn't chase, Ryan said quietly. Coda's ears flicked. Ryan's eyes narrowed slightly. Which means they didn't need to. That realization settled in deeper than anything else. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't random. They had walked straight into something already in motion. Ryan exhaled slowly. "All right," he murmured. "We adjust." He stepped toward a fallen tree nearby, brushing snow off the trunk before sitting down heavily. The cold seeped through his clothes almost instantly, but he didn't move. Not yet. Coda turned toward him, and that's when Ryan saw it. A dark patch along Coda's side. Small, but wrong. Ryan's breath caught. "Coda." The dog didn't react, didn't whine, didn't shift. Just stood there. Ryan dropped to his knees in the snow, hands moving quickly but carefully along Coda's fur. There, just behind the shoulder, a shallow cut, not deep, but fresh. Blood darkened the thick coat beneath it. Ryan's chest tightened. When did... He stopped himself. It didn't matter when. It mattered now. Coda stayed still as Ryan pressed his hand gently against the wound. "You took that back there," Ryan said softly. The dog didn't move away, didn't flinch. Ryan's jaw tightened. "You always do that." His voice dropped lower. "Always step in first." Coda's tail moved once, slow and steady. Ryan swallowed hard. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I know." He pulled off his jacket, ignoring the cold biting into his arms, and tore a strip from the inside lining. His movements were precise, practiced, not rushed. Control, always control. He cleaned the cut as best he could with snow, then wrapped it tightly enough to hold, but not enough to restrict movement. "You're okay," he said, more to himself than the dog. "You're okay." Coda leaned slightly into him. Just enough. Ryan rested his forehead briefly against the side of the dog's neck. For a moment, everything else faded. No cabin, no men, no questions. Just this. Just the quiet presence of something that had never left him. Ryan's breath slowed, then steadied. He pulled back, his eyes scanning the trees again. "We need to move," he said. But his voice lacked the urgency from before. Not because the danger was gone, but because something else had taken its place. Wait. The kind that came after action, after realization. Ryan stood slowly, brushing snow from his hands. Coda stayed close. They moved again, but slower this time, more deliberate. The forest stretched around them, endless and silent, the path ahead unclear. Ryan's mind replayed what they had seen. The room, the names, the items, the hidden structure, and the men, all of it connected, all of it deliberate. This wasn't small, he said quietly. This was organized. Coda walked beside him, steady despite the injury. Ryan glanced down. You still with me? Coda's ears flicked. Ryan gave a faint nod. Yeah, thought so. They walked until the trees began to thin slightly, revealing the faint outline of the trail they had come from. The light shifted just enough to break the heavy shadow that had surrounded them. Ryan stopped again. Not from exhaustion, from thought. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the photograph. The girl, still standing in front of that cabin, still looking at whoever stood behind the camera. Ryan stared at it longer this time, not as a clue, as a person. You were here, he said quietly. Coda's gaze followed the photo. Ryan flipped it over, then back again. She was part of it, he continued, not just connected to it. His chest tightened slightly. And now she's gone. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. Ryan lowered the photo. His hand tightened around it. For a moment, something broke through the steady control he had held onto. Not panic, not fear. Something deeper. Loss. The kind he had buried long ago. Faces he couldn't forget. Names he couldn't change. People he couldn't bring back. Ryan closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. Different. Focused. Clear. We're not walking away from this, he said. Coda stood firm beside him. Ryan nodded once. Not now. He folded the photograph carefully and tucked it back into his jacket. Then he turned toward the direction of the road. We go back, he said. Not to the cabin. A pause. To town. Coda's head tilted slightly. Ryan's eyes narrowed just enough. We need answers. The wind moved through the trees again, softer now. Ryan started forward. Coda followed. The forest behind them held its silence. But something had changed. Not the danger. Not the stakes. Ryan had changed. The hesitation was gone. The question of whether to walk away. Gone. In its place. Purpose. And for the first time since this started, Ryan Walker wasn't running from something. He was moving toward it. The road back into town felt different. Not safer. Not easier. Just clearer. Ryan drove in silence, hands steady on the wheel, eyes sharp but no longer searching for escape. The mountains faded behind them, replaced by open stretches of land and the quiet outlines of fences and farmhouses. The sky had turned a deeper gray, the kind that promised snow by nightfall. Coda lay down this time, but not fully relaxed. His head rested low, eyes still watching, ears reacting to every shift in sound. Ryan glanced at him once. You did good, he said quietly. Coda didn't move. Ryan's grip tightened slightly. Real good. The town appeared slowly ahead, familiar but no longer simple. Every building felt like it held something behind it now. Every face, every passing truck, every open door, it all carried weight. Ryan didn't go back to the storage unit. He didn't go to the lake. He went straight to the diner. The same faded sign buzzed faintly above the entrance. The same truck sat parked outside. But now Ryan noticed things he hadn't before. One truck idling too long. A man sitting inside, not eating, watching. Ryan stepped out of his vehicle, his posture calm, controlled. Coda followed. They entered the diner. Warmth again, Noise again. But Ryan's focus stayed sharp. Lily Carter was behind the counter. She saw him immediately. Her expression shifted. Not surprise, not fear, but something closer to concern. "You came back," she said. Ryan slid into the same booth as before. Coda settled beneath the table. "I need information," Ryan said. Lily didn't respond right away. She poured coffee and set it down in front of him. "You look like you found something you weren't supposed to," she said quietly. Ryan met her eyes. "I did." A pause. Lily glanced around the diner. No one was paying attention, or at least, no one obvious. She leaned slightly closer. "Then you shouldn't be here," she said. Ryan shook his head once. "I don't have a choice." Lily studied him for a moment. Then she nodded. "All right," she said. "What do you want to know?" Ryan reached into his jacket and pulled out the photograph. He placed it on the table. Lily looked down. Her expression changed instantly. Not shock. Recognition. "Where did you get this?" she asked. Ryan didn't answer directly. "She's connected to that unit," he said. "And the cabin in the mountains." Lily sat back slightly. "That cabin," she murmured. Her eyes moved to Coda, then back to Ryan. "You went there?" Ryan nodded. Lily exhaled slowly. "Then you're already in deeper than you think." Ryan leaned forward slightly. "Tell me what you know." Lily hesitated. Then, "That girl's name is Emma Hale," she said. Ryan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Hale?" Lily nodded. "Victor Hale's daughter." The name settled in the air like something heavy. Ryan leaned back slowly. "Victor Hale," he repeated. "Land developer," Lily said. "Owns half the property around here. Or at least, he's trying to." Ryan's mind moved quickly. The cabin, the hidden room, the operation. "And the other half?" he asked. Lily's gaze sharpened. "People who don't sell," she said. "People who disappear." Ryan's jaw tightened. "She's missing," he said. Lily nodded. "Been that way for months." Ryan glanced down at the photograph again. "She was there," he said. "At that cabin." Lily's voice dropped. "Then you need to understand something." Ryan looked up. "That place?" she continued. "It's not just some abandoned hideout. People who go near it don't come back the same." Ryan didn't react. "Or at all," she added. Silence stretched between them. Ryan's mind connected the pieces. The storage unit, the hidden case, the documents, the names. "This wasn't just about her," he said. Lily shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "It never was." Ryan leaned forward again. "What about the unit?" he asked. "Who owned it?" Lily hesitated longer this time. Then, "A journalist," she said. "Name was Daniel Reeves." Ryan watched her closely. "He came into town about a year ago," she continued. "Started asking questions. Looking into land deals, missing people, things no one wanted to talk about." "And then?" Ryan asked. Lily's expression hardened. "He disappeared." Ryan's eyes didn't leave hers. "No body," she said. "No report. Just gone." Ryan leaned back slightly. "The unit was his." Lily nodded. "He must have left it behind on purpose." Ryan thought about the case again. The money, the phone, the coordinates. "A trail," he said. Lily's voice dropped even lower. "For someone who could finish what he started." Ryan didn't respond, because he already knew what that meant. Coda shifted beneath the table. Ryan glanced down briefly, then back at Lily. Why not go to the police? He asked. Lily gave a small, humorless smile. Because around here, she said, you don't always know who they answer to. Ryan reached into his jacket and pulled out the folded note. He slid it across the table. Lily read it, then looked back up at him. That's why, she said. Silence settled again. Ryan sat back, letting everything fall into place. Victor Hale, the missing girl, the journalist, the hidden operation. And now, him. They were waiting at the cabin, Ryan said. Lily's eyes widened slightly. You saw them? Ryan nodded. They're still active, he continued. Still using that place. Lily looked toward the window briefly, then back at him. Then you don't have much time, she said. Ryan's expression didn't change. I'm not leaving. Lily studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. All right, she said. Then you're going to need help. Ryan didn't ask what she meant, because for the first time since this started, he wasn't the only one who knew the truth, and that changed everything. Outside, the wind picked up again, pushing snow across the empty road. Inside the diner, nothing looked different. But beneath the surface, the story had shifted. What Ryan had uncovered in that cabin was no longer a hidden secret. It was a war that had already begun. And now, he knew exactly who was behind it. Ryan didn't rush out of the diner. He sat for another minute, letting the weight of the name settle into something usable. Victor Hale. Not a ghost. Not a rumor. A man with buildings, trucks, paperwork, and people who answered when he called. Across from him, Lily kept her voice low. He's got a place outside town, she said. Old industrial lot near the rail spur. Used to be a lumber yard. No one goes there anymore. Ryan's eyes moved to the window. The idling truck from earlier had gone. The road was quiet again, but the quiet felt staged now. Security? He asked. Private, Lily said. Rotates. Not uniformed. They keep it clean, no noise, no attention. Ryan nodded once. Coda shifted beneath the table, pressing lightly against Ryan's boot. Ryan reached down, brushing the dog's shoulder, careful of the wrapped cut. The bandage held. We won't go loud, Ryan said. We go smart. Lily studied him. You've done this before. Ryan didn't answer. He finished the coffee, set the mug down, and stood. You know a back way in? Lily hesitated, then nodded. There's an access road behind the grain silos, half washed out. Most people avoid it. Good, Ryan said. We'll use that. Dusk settled early. The sky turned a deep slate, and the first real flakes of snow began to fall, thin and steady. Ryan drove with his headlights low, taking the longer route out of town to avoid the main road. The industrial yard came into view as a cluster of dark shapes beyond a chain-link fence. Old sheds, a wide warehouse, stacks of timber bleached by time. No lights in the windows, but a single flood lamp burned near the front gate. Ryan cut the engine before they reached the fence line. From here, he said. Coda stepped out beside him, posture tight but controlled. Ryan checked the bandage again, with a quick glance. You stay with me, he murmured. No hero moves. Coda's ears flicked. They moved along the tree line, keeping low where the brush met the edge of the property. The back road Lily had mentioned was barely a path now, mud frozen into uneven ridges, tire tracks old and half-covered. Ryan paused at a break in the fence. A section had been cut and wired back together. He knelt, working the twist free with careful fingers. The metal gave without sound. Through, he whispered. Coda slipped in first. Ryan followed. Inside, the air felt different, still, held. The warehouse loomed ahead, its wide doors shut. A smaller side entrance barely visible along the right wall. A pickup truck sat near the loading bay, engine off, windows dark. Ryan watched for a full 10 seconds, then another 10. No movement. He angled right, keeping the building between them and the front gate. Coda moved like a shadow. At the side door, Ryan tested the handle. Locked. He leaned close, listening. Nothing. He stepped back, scanning the wall. A narrow window, high and cracked. Too small. Then voices. Faint. From inside. Ryan pressed his palm flat against the metal door. 2, he whispered. Coda's head turned slightly, catching the direction. Ryan circled to the back corner of the building. A service door sat there, half hidden behind stacked pallets. The handle turned, unlocked. Ryan eased it open just enough to slip inside. Darkness. The smell of oil and old wood. A long aisle stretched ahead between shelving units. The voices were clearer now. Low, controlled, somewhere toward the front of the warehouse. Ryan moved forward, each step placed with care. Coda stayed tight at his left. They reached a break in the shelving where the floor opened into a larger space. Light spilled across concrete from a single hanging lamp. 2 men stood near a table. On the table, folders, a laptop, and a stack of photos. Ryan's eyes caught one as it shifted in the light. The girl, Emma. He felt his chest tighten, then settle. "Shipment moves tonight," one of the men said. "Hale wants it clean." The other nodded. "And the journalist stuff?" "Handled. If anyone found it, they won't get far." Ryan's jaw set. He stepped out from the shadows. "That's far enough," he said. Both men turned. Surprise flashed, then hardened. Hands moved. Ryan didn't wait. He closed the distance in 2 steps, controlling the first man's reach and pushing him back against the table. The second man hesitated just long enough for Coda to step in front of him, posture low and unwavering. "Don't," Ryan said, voice calm. The room held. No shouting, no panic, just a tight, controlled standoff. "Where is she?" Ryan asked. The first man didn't answer. Ryan's gaze didn't waver. "Emma Hale." A flicker of recognition crossed the man's face before he masked it. "That's not your concern." "It is now," Ryan said. Coda's growl deepened a fraction. The second man shifted his weight. Ryan's eyes snapped to him. "Stay." Silence pressed in again. Then, a sound from deeper in the warehouse. A door opening. More footsteps. Ryan's focus sharpened. "We're out," he said quietly. He backed away, keeping the men in front of him. "Coda." The dog moved with him, step for step. They slipped back into the aisle, then into darkness. The voices behind them rose slightly. Alert now, not loud, but moving. Ryan didn't run. He moved fast, controlled, retracing their path to the service door. Outside, the snow had thickened, covering their tracks as they stepped back through the fence and into the trees. Only when the warehouse disappeared behind the falling snow did Ryan stop. He exhaled slowly. "Shipment," he said. "Tonight." Coda stood beside him, steady. Ryan looked back toward the dark outline of the building. "We're not done." The words carried no doubt, no hesitation. He had seen enough. He had heard enough. And now he knew where to go next. Ryan turned toward the truck. "Come on," he said. Coda followed. Because whatever Hale was planning, it was already in motion. And this time, Ryan wasn't walking into the middle of it. He was stepping in front of it. Snow fell harder now, thick and steady, swallowing sound and softening the world into something almost unreal. The road ahead stretched dark beneath his headlights, as Ryan drove away from the warehouse, his mind no longer searching, only aligning. Pieces had become direction. Direction had become purpose. "Shipment tonight," he said quietly. Coda sat upright beside him, eyes forward, steady. Ryan's grip tightened slightly on the wheel. "We don't wait for it to move," he continued. "We stop it before it does." The truck rolled back toward town, then past it, toward the stretch of rail line that cut through the valley just beyond the industrial edge. Old tracks, limited traffic, easy access in and out without being seen. Ryan slowed as the faint outline of rail cars appeared in the distance. Dark shapes against darker ground. No lights, but not empty. He pulled the truck off the road, cutting the engine. Silence closed in again. Ryan turned to Coda. "This is it," he said. Coda's ears flicked once. Ryan stepped out into the snow. Cold hit harder now, sharper, but he barely felt it. His focus had narrowed. No past, no hesitation, just the moment ahead. They moved along the edge of the rail yard, staying low between stacked crates and rusted equipment. The snow masked their movement, each step quiet, deliberate. Voices carried faintly through the air. Not many. Controlled. Ryan paused, listening. 2, maybe 3, he murmured. Coda leaned slightly forward, ready. Ryan nodded once. They moved closer. A single rail car sat detached from the others, its side door partially open. A faint light glowed from within. Ryan crouched beside the edge of a crate, eyes fixed on the opening. Then, a movement. Inside. A small figure. Ryan's breath slowed. "Emma," he said under his breath. Coda's posture shifted, tension rising. Ryan watched carefully. The girl sat near the far end of the rail car, wrapped in a blanket, small, still, not restrained, but not free either. A man stood near the door, checking something on his phone. Another voice came from outside. 10 minutes, someone said. Then we move. Ryan's jaw tightened. No time, he whispered. He looked at Coda. The dog's eyes were locked on the rail car. Stay with me, Ryan said. He moved, fast, controlled. Closing the distance in seconds, he stepped into the doorway before the man inside could react. Don't, Ryan said. The man froze. Not from fear, from surprise. Ryan's presence filled the space, calm, steady, unshaken. Step back, Ryan added. The man hesitated. Coda moved in beside Ryan, silent but unmistakable. The man stepped back. Ryan didn't waste time. He crossed the space and knelt in front of the girl. Hey, he said softly. She looked up, eyes tired, but aware. You're okay, Ryan continued. We're getting you out of here. She didn't speak, just watched him. Ryan held her gaze for a moment, steady. Then he stood. Coda. The dog stayed close as Ryan guided the girl toward the door. Outside, movement. Voices. Closer now. Ryan stepped down from the rail car, keeping himself between the girl and the open yard. Stay behind me, he said. Coda positioned himself on her other side. The three of them moved quickly, low, using the shadows between equipment to break line of sight. A voice called out behind them, sharp, alert. Ryan didn't look back. They reached the edge of the yard just as headlights swept across the far side, cutting through the snow. Move, Ryan said. They crossed the open ground in one clean line. The truck came into view. Ryan opened the passenger door. Get in. The girl climbed inside. Coda followed. Ryan circled to the driver's side, started the engine, and pulled onto the road without hesitation. The rail yard disappeared behind them. No pursuit, no lights following, just snow and distance. Ryan drove for several minutes before speaking again. "You're safe now," he said. The girl looked at him, then at Coda. Her hand reached out slowly. Coda didn't move. He let her. Ryan's grip loosened slightly on the wheel. For the first time since this began, something eased. Weeks later, the snow had begun to melt. The valley looked different now, less harsh, more open. The same mountains stood in the distance, but the air felt lighter. Ryan stood at the edge of a small piece of land just outside town. Not much, but enough. A place with a view of the hills, a fence that needed work, and a house that still smelled like fresh wood and quiet mornings. Behind him, Coda lay in the sun, his wound healed, though a faint scar remained beneath his fur. Emma sat on the porch steps, a blanket around her shoulders, watching the sky. Ryan stepped closer. "You doing all right?" he asked. She nodded. Not much, but enough. Ryan gave a small nod in return. Down the road, a patrol truck passed slowly, then continued on. Things had changed. The warehouse had been shut down. The operation exposed. Names brought into the light. Not all of it, but enough. Ryan looked out across the land again. "You don't have to stay," he said quietly. "There are people who can take you somewhere else." Emma looked at him, then at Coda, then back at the house. "I know," she said softly. Ryan nodded once. He understood. Some places you didn't leave right away. Some things took time. Coda stood and walked over, sitting beside Ryan. The three of them stood there in the quiet. No urgency, no threat. Just space. Just time. Ryan exhaled slowly. The weight he had carried for years hadn't disappeared. It never would. But it had shifted. It no longer held him in place. It no longer defined where he ended. He looked down at Coda. "You found it," he said quietly. Coda's tail moved once. Ryan gave a faint smile. "Yeah," he added. "You always do." The sun dipped lower behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the land. Ryan stood there a moment longer, then stepped forward. Not running, not chasing, just moving, into whatever came next. And for the first time in a long while, that was enough. If you believe a man and his dog deserve a second chance, type yes in the comments. And if stories about justice, grit, and standing your ground mean something to you, go ahead and subscribe. We've got more waiting for you.